Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to our talk today. We've learned a lot from conducting penetration tests here at the University of Maryland, College Park over the last couple of years and wanted to share some of the lessons that we've learned, both from the university perspective and from the penetration testing firm perspective to help you as you either start or grow your penetration testing program. So who are we? I am Kevin Shivers. I'm the Deputy CISO at University of Maryland, College Park.
Hi, I'm Jay Beale. I'm CTO at their penetration tester in Guardians.
So how do we get here? How do we start penetration testing? Well, for us, unfortunately, we had a data breach in 2014. It was fairly significant, and during a press conference related to the breach and what actions we were taking, our campus president announced publicly that we were going to be performing penetration tests. And so then we learned that we needed to find a penetration testing firm very rapidly. So how do we find a firm? There are tons of firms out there, everything from, really great firms that know what they're doing to, shops that are just going to, run a vulnerability scan report and remove the vulnerability scanning tools logo and replace it with theirs, or to, small firms that, it's one of 14 different services they offer. So how do you find a good, legitimate firm? So what worked for us was we reached out to our peers and said, hey, who have you used? And that enabled us to build an initial list of companies to contact, to go through these scoping calls, and then kind of get proposals from them. As part of that, we asked those firms to give us a list of references that were in the higher ed space, and we actually checked those references, which was really good in the end for us. One of the firms that we talked to, they gave us a reference. When we talked to that reference, they actually recommended we did not use that particular firm, just saying they had a number of challenges with them, and they said they were no longer to work with them. So that was kind of one we could take off of the short list. And then as we're going through that refining list, a big thing for us was who actually listened to us. When we kind of got down to our final few firms, and we said we want penetration testing, and there are certain requirements, about half of them completely ignored what we said and just said, here's our standard option. We're going to give you, a threat assessment. And the threat assessment vulnerability scanning is useful, yes, but when the campus president says they want penetration testing, I'm going to give them penetration testing. So that was kind of what helped us narrow it down. And in the end, we found in Guardians we're very happy with. Next up,
So how do you choose scope? So I'm from InGuardians, penetration testing firm. We're pen test firm. We test pens. Luckily, we also test computers. So the University of Maryland had never done penetration testing before, and so in that case, it's really easy to choose scope. So for that initial test, you basically say, let's scan the whole campus. Let's probe the whole campus. Let's attack the whole campus in a pretty manual way. And that means you find a lot of low-hanging fruit, but it turns out the low-hanging fruit when you've never had a penetration test can be very, very valuable fruit. So we found all kinds of things. One of those was, we found a multifunction device that had tax record scans on it from, people who were applying for financial aid, some pretty valuable PII. One of my favorite occasions, I got to participate in this part. It was really interesting. When we were outside the campus, we ended up pivoting to another department. So we were attacking the campus from outside, the same way you could from anywhere on the internet, and we probed, one department, and that department didn't have valuable data, but it did give us a great foothold. We had a nice, juicy machine with plenty of bandwidth on the LAN. At which point we could scan and find storage systems, and so we found a storage system, a network file share, a Linux-based one, so NFS. That was allowing any IP on the internet to read and write all the contents, and included in those contents were virtual machine hard disks. And we thought they were backups at first, but they turned out to be the actual running hard disks for a hypervisor, for the virtual machines the hypervisor was hosting. And so we mounted those, funky little mount. You mount NFS all the way across the internet the same way North Korea could, right? And then you mount inside that a virtual machine hard drive, and then the partition on that hard drive, and now you've got the file system for the server. And on that file system, we could go and grab the password hashes. We could have modified anything we wanted, but in this case, just grab the password hashes throw them into a cracking rig, and we end up with passwords that we can then use on that system and in other systems around the campus. And that's, you know, yeah, that's the kind of low-hanging fruit you'll find when you can scan widely and then pursue that with manual effort. So can we go to the next slide, please? So that's kind of where you start out first, and you'll do a couple rounds of that, especially when the campus is that large. You know, University of Maryland's 40,000 students, has 2 Class Bs, so more than 130,000 IP addresses. And at the time, most anything on campus that wasn't on wireless or in a dorm had a publicly routable IP address, was routed from anywhere in the world. So things got stronger. As you get stronger, you start to go and target more critical systems. You say, okay, now we're going to focus on, and the biggest one, the most critical in any situation ever, is Active Directory, any kind of centralized authentication and authorization system. You also look at financial systems because, well, that's important everywhere. Student information systems, in this case, have social security numbers for students. That's some great PII, and that's basically what made the University of Maryland's initial hack into, front page news on a national newspaper. So you better believe we're going to be tuning the test to make sure that we're clearing up any cases we can of PII, of social security numbers especially, and then grading systems, of course, because what student doesn't want to change their grades. So next slide, and I'll start off this slide, and then Kevin will take it. So as you mature, once you've gotten those critical central pieces, you start looking at the specific departments, and that is as much a social exercise, or maybe even more so a social exercise than a technical exercise. And so I'll let Kevin take that, because he's done that work.
So, after we covered our core and critical systems, to central IT, we decided that, from what we found there, we should start moving into departments that have, that they had or we had concerns about, who has high-risk systems or high-risk data. For example, we had a department that was processing hundreds of thousands of credit card transactions and card swipes a year. That's a huge PCI risk. So we started doing some pen tests of their environment to make sure they're compliant. We have a health center on campus that deals with all kinds of patient health records, as well as they accept insurance. So we have HIPAA concerns there. We swim in FERPA-related data all day long with student records. We want to make sure that stuff's protected. And also we also had a concern about, we have a number of research, a lot of research things going on campus. Some of that might be appealing to, foreign nations, kind of espionage concerns. So we wanted to see, are those departments and is their data locked down and secure, as well as, there are departments that receive donations and grants. Is that stuff protected? Could an attacker take over that and be able to cut checks out of those funds? We wanted to ensure those things were tested. And also as we started reaching out saying, hey, department X, Y, or Z, we want to do some penetration testing in your environment. Here's what we're looking at. Some of those departments are a lot more positive and came to us, or even came to us before we even asked them, hey, can you help us? We're concerned. We want to encourage people to make those good, smart security decisions. So we will work with them and involve them in our pen testing program.
So when you start to test the departments, you find all kinds of things, including many won't expect. It is a fortunate or unfortunate, depending on which side of the equation you're on, effect of penetration testing that often you end up building an inventory out of it sometimes. So we found admin consoles for hypervisors, like in that other example. We found the elevator, we found an elevator management system. Now we couldn't, make them go up and down like in the movies. We found storage systems, and those, I have to just underscore, are really vital, because when you think about where the data is, well, think about file storage, think about record storage like databases. Speaking of databases, you find end-of-life applications like end-of-life Oracle 9i. You find end-of-life servers like Windows 2003 servers, and you find lots of PII on them. Now, the sad part about them being end-of-life is that if they're end-of-life, that generally means that any vulnerabilities that come out won't have patches for them anymore, which means it's not just, if we find that we can exploit it, and you need to fix it, it's doing a lot more than just apply a patch. It's like we have to figure out a migration path off that. So, but the first step often is finding out you have it and finding out that dealing with it has got to be a higher priority. Um, let's see, what else do we find? We find a ton of shadow IT. So, like you have in your university environment, you have central IT, then you have what, we call federated IT, which is, departments that are above board, running some of their own infrastructure. Everybody knows about it, and there may even be some decent security controls that have been brought from central campus onto it. And then you have the shadow IT, the things that people have stood up, maybe because they had, some need that was really short term, or just they didn't really think of involving anybody else. And then sometimes they've even moved on from the university afterwards. So you end up finding a whole bunch of that shadow IT, and often that's where, it's the assets you don't realize you have that turn out to have the vulnerabilities. We found, similar to on that shadow IT front, we found services that were running off, say, personal Gmail accounts, and that was the workflow for, for incoming PII data. And moreover, you find things that you thought were turned off years ago, and everyone's got a favorite story of that. My favorite story is, hacking a system and saying to the client, so we found SunOS system, we could use that as a beachhead, and that was really useful for us. And the client says, SunOS? We haven't run SunOS here in years. And they end up, you tell them the IP address, they end up tracing the port along the cable until they get to drywall, and they find that there's a SunOS system that's been Amontillato'd into, by drywall, and so no one's turned it off, much less managed it, because no one realized it existed. So that's kind of some of the fun stuff that we find. So the other another just really crucial note that Kevin and I wanted to share with you was social engineering. And social engineering is really important, whether it's phishing or phishing or vishing phone calls or physical penetration testing. We do phishing engagements at the university to gauge and build the staff's resistance to phishing attacks, and that's really important because the criminal's first step in hacking a network is very often, almost always, to send a phish. So you want to build resistance to realistic, strong, and current phishing pretexts. So there was an exercise we did with the University of Maryland that produced some lessons learned, and that's where the scenario that got chosen was a mandatory active shooter training, kind of similar to the active shooter training that staff receive in secondary education environments. And this was really timely. A number of schools had recent active shooter incidents, and so we have a process we go through where we talk about, like, okay, so here's a pretext. Can you approve it? Great, you like it. Who else should you escalate it up to or over to? And we had this, in this one, it got escalated. It didn't really get escalated anywhere except for one level up. It got escalated to a CISO. That was really helpful because at least you have a C-level officer there. But we didn't loop enough, we didn't loop enough people in here. And so what happened was, the emails go out. I should back up. I should back up. But so we didn't loop enough people in here. We did, the client did, loop in the police department, let them know, like, hey, this is the pretext, and you may get some phone calls. And what ends up happening is, a few days later, the emails start going out, and people are starting to click the link. But at least one of the people called the campus police to ask questions about this, mandatory active shooter training they have to go through. And the chief of police, who the message hadn't gotten escalated up to just yet, told College Park, told College Park's CIO, what the heck's going on here? You've got to stop this. And that shut down a phishing engagement before we could find out what it was going to learn. And it certainly, created some temporary concern and upset. And so, lesson learned here. Every penetration testing firm has at least one of these stories, and at the end of the day, the biggest thing is on both sides is you saying, okay, as the client, you have to make sure you're getting sign off for the phishing you're doing and for the specific pretext you're doing. both up. So hit that CIO, but maybe go, but maybe hit more officers. Talk to the departments that are going to receive the emails. In this case, the police department, that are going to receive those emails that, questions about the pretexts, that are going to get those phone calls. Talk to your general counsel. It may sound like overkill. Just trust me, it isn't. Talk to the general counsel, talk to your HR, and basically loop people in, because the worst case scenario when you loop too many people in is usually people are like, why do you feel like you need to ask me about it? There's no big deal. And the best case scenario is, the best case scenario is that they really appreciate it, and you build trust, and that's really, really helpful. Okay.
So next thing I want to talk about is getting departmental buy-in. This is not just from the technical owner of the systems. You need to include the business or service owner as well. And if you're not sure, communicate. A great example, we wanted to test our student grading system. And so that was something developed in-house in central IT. I reached out to the application developer and the technical owner and said, hey, we want to do this. They were on board. I said, great, let's get started. And they said, whoa. We need to involve the business owner to make sure they get sign off, which in this case was the registrar. So I, scheduled a meeting with the registrar, contacted them about, hey, here's what we want to do. We want to test the system. And they immediately were like, no, we don't want to do that. What if you turn this, knock the system offline, or they had a lot of concerns about doing this. And so, I worked through and explained to them that we'd be testing against a QA version of the site, so it would not impact production operations. It was also not during a grading time where they might need to push a change in QA rapidly, so it wouldn't impact daily operations. And that, the end goal of this is that we want to find out that if there is an issue, we can fix it before it's an issue, so that we can ensure the security and the validity of grades that are entered in this electronic system. And by doing that, they had that aha moment, and they bought in and said, okay, let's go for it and do it. So, you're going to have some anxiety, be prepared to help walk them through this, this interaction. To add on to that, one thing that we found very helpful is to explain upfront with departments that, this is not something where we're going to get a list of issues and then pull them up on stage and, go shame. This is, again, trying to find issues before an attacker does, and fix them and mitigate them. There should not be an adversarial relationship between the penetration testers and the department being tested. They're doing this to benefit that department, to help give them a roadmap of here's challenges you need to fix, as well as, the report can be used as a tool by those IT managers to get additional resources. So a great example, we had a department that was being tested, and they kind of begrudgingly decided to go along with this initially. And when the pen testers would find something, they'd report it, and they'd be the department would be very quickly to kind of fix the issue. So, for example, there was a system that was broken into by the penetration testers. As part of their testing, as they used that to pivot to another system, it went unresponsive. And so they contacted the department saying, could you please power cycle this for us? And instead of doing that, they ran into their data center and yanked the power and said, well, we're going to discontinue this the service in a couple months anyway, so we just shut it down now. It wasn't giving us a good valid test. And so, we had to sit down of like, look, this is not to bring shame to you. This is to help you, find these issues, as well as, again, give you a tool that you can go to your leadership and say, I need more resources, whether that's people or servers or, security tools. And so, that IT manager finally, they got it, and leverage the final report to get additional funding so they could hire a full-time staff person that just does IT security, which has been fantastic.
And framing that, and framing that is very much your job. The pen test firm can do it with you, but it's one of those places where the effort on the front end to talk to the department and raise their comfort, and then if they get scared in the middle, like that one did, to talk them through some more and just build their comfort with what's going on. And part of the way we do that is we say, listen, you have to realize if this is your first penetration test, we're going to get in. It's our job. We're good at it. But things are going to, like that's not going to that's going to have a really positive that's going to have a really positive result. And the best way that I talk about that is I say, listen, on your first one, you're going to be Swiss cheese. We're going to get in. We're going to get in pretty quickly, and we're going to give you information that'll be really useful for figuring out what of all the available kinds of mitigations and controls you can put in, the most important for blocking an attack. And then you're going to make it stronger. And the second time that we do a test on you, it's going to be much harder. We're going to get a little frustrated. And by the third time we do it, I'm going to be talking to one of our guys, and he's going to be saying, I don't know, I don't think I'm all that good at this pen testing stuff. Maybe I should, maybe I should, I don't know, I like working on old cars. Maybe I should join my uncle's shop, become a mechanic. And we're like, no, you're doing great. This is what's supposed to happen. The client is basically getting hardened, and it works really well.
From the client university side, the kind of other side of that of a good example of this, and where you can carry on with the engagement. When we were doing a test against our Active Directory environment, the penetration testers did get in after about a week and a half or 2 weeks, and our Windows admins were super distraught that this happened. They felt like they were failures. They should maybe get out of IT. And one of the penetration testers said, hey, look, you all should be really proud of yourselves. It usually takes us about a day to get domain admin. It took us, a week and a half, 2 weeks, however long it was. We were really frustrated at how difficult this was. If this wasn't the specific goal of this test, or if we were, one of those kind of, advanced adversarial threats, we probably would have gotten frustrated after day, 2 or 3 and moved on to other targets. So this was a positive sign that the team was doing the right thing in terms of privilege separation, network segmentation. They were doing a good job. To follow up to that, the penetration testers and the Windows admins kind of jointly said, hey, can we get together and, you replay your attack step by step, and we can see along the way of what are our tools catching, what are they not catching, is there additional logging or alerting we can set up? And so we did that, and it was really, really beneficial. It gave us a ton of new alerts and reports to set up, as well as people additional improvements to our Windows domain. So purple teaming is a really, really awesome thing.
That was the start of our purple teaming effort, of our purple teaming practice, and it's just been really, really useful time and again to combine the attackers with the defenders and say, I just did this, can you see it? Okay, now I can see it. I just did this, can you block it? Okay, now I can block it. We're going to talk about third-party service providers. When you're trying to get penetration testing, your third-party providers, any of that software as a service you have, anything that's run, anything that's run or leased or managed by another party, that can be a place where things can take a lot longer to set up and you can hit roadblocks. So with the university, we had a place where a mobile app company elected not to be tested. They didn't give consent for their stuff to be tested, even though a ton of money at the university went through their system. The lesson learned there is you go and talk to procurement and you say, procurement, you need to negotiate right to test into the next contract renewal. And that goes in, and now the next time around, you're able to test them. So even when for lots of the third parties, they will, even if you don't have that on your contract, be cooperative, but it will take more time to introduce yourself to them, to introduce your testing firm, and for them to figure out who has to know and so on, so you can get that approval to test. And the best thing you can do for your effort is basically give yourself a good bit of lead time to have those conversations with the third-party providers. Do everything you can before you've even started, putting the test out for RFP, to figure out which ones are going to let you test and have those conversations. Next slide. And so that leads to preparation. This slide's called preparation, inspiration, and fear. So that fear it's kind of like you go backwards. That fear is what that given department might have, or that third-party service provider might have about getting tested. So you do a lot more preparation so you can turn that into inspiration, where they're excited to be tested and they're excited to get the results and to use those to make things stronger. So one thing that University of Maryland staff has done really, really well in the last couple of years is they took the questions that we used to scope the level of effort, and they started asking those to departments ahead of time and saying, okay, what do you have? What applications do you use? What kind of data do you handle? What do you imagine your risks to be? And honestly, that's not only helped us get a much more focused test and to know who we're going to be talking to when we're starting the work and so on over at the department. It also ends up providing, central IT and information security staff with information they wouldn't necessarily have about the departments, and it gives them a much better picture of what it is they're trying to protect and where the valuable data is, and that's just really, really useful situational awareness.
So I want to thank you for taking some time out to watch this presentation with us. We hope you gain some insight into what we found has worked in doing penetration testing in the university environment. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us or contact email below. Thanks and have a great day.